Welcome to Navigating Now, real talk for rocky times. A Pete the Planner CalmCast.
Welcome, everyone. It is Peter Dunn, Pete the Planner, CEO of Your Moneyline, and this is Navigating Now every Tuesday and Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. We recap what has happened in the market since the last time we got together. We also talk about the developments in the economy and, of course, a small personal finance lesson for you to boot at the end of the episode. The reason we're doing this, hopefully, is quite clear. The economy is a little bit rocky, right? This year was fine. Starting at the very beginning of April, was just a month ago, as today is now May 1st. On April 2nd, things got really rocky. So we said, pull the alarm. Let's make sure people stay calm.
CalmCast.
On the CalmCast here. And so that's what we're doing. Now, before we go much further, who is joining us here today? Participants of Your Moneyline. That means if your company has Your Moneyline as an employee benefit, there's hundreds of thousands of you. This event's for you, and you can call us and you call your coach or go to certainly your account anytime you want, and we can answer these questions for you more specifically. And it's for the general public too, just to show you what you're missing by not being with Your Moneyline. But anyway, today's topics: time in the market. Time in the market is the first topic. Of course, we're also going to talk about the Fed and then debt to income ratio. You hear it all the time. What does it really mean? It's one of those metrics that it feels like it's for other people to measure about you, but the reality is, don't gaslight yourself. It's pretty good for you to know your debt to income ratio and let it guide you, as opposed to just being able to borrow more money. Since we last spoke, the market volatility has slowed down a little bit, meaning it hasn't been having wild swings. I will say it is rallying. The S&P 500 is rallying. We're only down 4% for the year now. And at one point, we were down 14 to 15% for the year. And that's during when we were doing Navigating Now, which is pretty unique. So why do I tell this to you? Because the whole point of time in the market is that if you want to participate in the gains, if you want to participate in the good times, you gotta participate in the bad times too. That is the strange nature of all of this. You have to be in the market during the bad times. And I know that's against every morsel of logic in your head. You're thinking, if times are bad, I don't want to be exposed to the bad. I feel you. I don't either. But by trying to avoid the bad, you unintentionally and almost every time avoid the good. I'll give you an example. If you miss just the 10 best single days in the market over the last 20 years, okay? If you miss just 10 individual days that happen to be the best days, and by the way, those best days almost always come on the heels of terrible days. If you would have done that over the last 20 years, your returns would be cut in half. You would have half the return than you would had you just sat there the whole time. So you try to avoid the bad, but then you accidentally avoid the good. And that is the point of time in the market, as opposed to timing the market. Every time there's volatility like this, whether it was around September 11th or the housing crisis of 2008, 2009, or COVID, or now, people always ask, what should I do as it relates to my investing? The answer, in almost every case, with exception, of course, is nothing. You should do nothing. And it's not because you shouldn't avoid the bad. It's because you will unintentionally avoid the good. And that's what we can't have happen. All right. Let's talk about the Fed. We talk about the Fed all the time. You hear people talk about it like the Feds, like the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. Is that what we're talking about? The Fed's job, the Federal Reserve Board, has a job. Their job is to keep inflation in check. Okay, so you and I have been subject to some pretty nasty inflation over the last few years. And it's the interest rate movements they made, increasing the interest rates, that helped bring in the inflation rate down, right? There's a lot of factors, but that is a major factor is increased interest rates brings the inflation rate down. As you've possibly seen with the news, even this week, inflation's in a really, really, really unbelievably great spot right now. Prices are still rising, but at the pace they should, which is like 2.5% is where I think it is right now. Okay, so that's one thing they do. The second thing the Fed helps do with all of their tools and measures, which are strange and mysterious at times, is they try to get us at full employment. By us, I mean the American people, the economy. They want the right amount of jobs and the right amount of workers, and we all go off into glory together. And they have ways of stoking that or slowing it down. So that's their second measure. Their third responsibility is to keep the economy stable. They have to look at other factors, things like tariffs, things like the valuation of the US dollar compared to other currencies, and lots of other factors. And then they have to say, should we attempt to stabilize this? Again, we don't talk politics on the show, but we do talk like factual things that have happened. President Trump has asked the Fed to lower interest rates right now. And it's because the tariffs are likely to cause some level of inflation starting here in about a couple weeks, right? Within the next 2 weeks, arguably next Friday, is when you'll likely start to see prices rise a little bit because of the tariffs, because they will have been in effect. The container ships will have come over. And so President Trump wants the Fed to act now. The Fed is saying, we're not going to act now. We're keeping an eye on it. We may act later. And that is the role of the Fed. I will also note the Fed can be quite controversial depending on what you believe. So just know that, right? This is not a one-sided thing. Some people disagree with their role altogether and they think it is too powerful. Now, if you've ever gone to borrow money, you may have heard the term debt to income ratio. What it is, you should definitely calculate yours. I want you to think about all the payments you make towards debt in any given month. Okay, so it's credit cards, car loans, student loans, your mortgage. So add up that number, okay? And then just divide by your gross monthly household income. If you're an individual, you can just put it on yourself, right? So think about this. Let's say your household income is $6,000 a month, and you've got $2,000 a month of debt payments. Maybe that includes your mortgage, a car, and maybe a small car loan. That math, 2,000 divided by 6,000, even I know this on a Thursday, it's 33%, okay? Which means your debt to income ratio is stable. If you're under 36%, if your debt to income ratio is under 36%, you're stable. If you're over 43%, you are in a danger zone, all right? So think about this. 37 to 42 isn't ideal, okay? If you're 37 to 42, it's like, rather you not, but just don't let it go up too much more. If you're up over 43, you're actually you're in a rough spot. You're in a danger zone, and you probably are feeling it more than you're seeing it. This is the interesting thing about debt to income ratio is you feel all of this happening. You just maybe haven't put a number or a name to it. But if you're at 43%, or God forbid, you're above 50%, you may not have known that, but man, you feel it. So I'm curious, once you run this, which you should, add up all of your debt payments over the course of a month, not the balance, but the payment, what you're paying on it, then divide by your gross monthly income. You want to be below 36%. All right, that is it for this episode this week. You can, of course, watch back episodes on YouTube and subscribe to the Pete the Planner podcast, and you can just listen to them as they come out. We are talking asset allocation, gross domestic product, and credit score on the next episode. Wow, how are we going to do that in 10 minutes? Asset allocation, GDP, and credit score. I'll give you a hint on GDP. We just learned that it went backwards in the first quarter, and backwards is not where you want a GDP to go. We'll explain why. We'll explain how your credit score is really calculated and why you should care. And of course, asset allocation, oddly misunderstood. That's it. I'm Pete. Subscribe, smash that like button, as the kids say. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time right here on the
CalmCast.
I'm Pete the Planner.